this morning I'm dressed as 118. One, because any excuse to dress up is always a good thing. And the other reason why I dress as 118, obviously they're meant to be like a retro marathon runner, aren't they? So we're going to be looking at running the race. And so I thought it's kind of good, the word association or picture association. So when you see me or whenever you see 118 on the television, hopefully it'll bring to mind what we've talked about today. So, and just prompt you. So that's the idea, a little bit behind it. So I decided to look at, when Lucas asked me to preach, I decided to look at when Paul talks about running the race, because one, I love fitness, so anything that where I can get to look into fitness a bit more is always exciting, because it's something I enjoy. And the other thing, throughout life, I've always generally found that when I'm going through any trials or struggles, the hardest bit is the bit nearest to the end. You know, or even when you're kind of like, you know, using it as an analogy on the treadmill, you know, you've only got 30 seconds left to run. It is the hardest 30 seconds going, and it's the part where you just want to give in, and you're so close to the end. And that's been something I've kind of like chewed on over the years, and I thought, well, it's a good opportunity while Lucas has asked me to preach, to have a little look at it, and just to see if there's anything that we can do to increase our success and our ability to run the race. So I thought I'd give a little bit of background about who Paul is and who he's talking to, just to kind of make sense of it all. So Paul, before he became a Christian, was known as Saul, and he was a young man, and he was Jewish, and he was very zealous for the ways of the law. He learned under a guy called Gamaliel, who holds a reputation as being one of the greatest teachers in the annals of the Jewish history, kind of thing. So he was learning under kind of the best, or one of the best. And he actually described himself as a Hebrew of Hebrews, a Pharisee, and one who advanced in Judaism beyond many of his peers. So he was really zealous about what he was doing, really serious about putting the law into practice. So serious that he witnessed and approved the stoning of Stephen. And he violently sought the end of the Christian church, is what he wanted. So, he was out actually trying to round up Christians to arrest them and bring them back to Jerusalem, when he actually was on the road to Damascus and met Jesus, and he was saved. And the good thing about, and then his name became Paul, and the great thing about Paul is he used the same zeal to spread the Christian message and the message of Jesus as he did when he was looking after the law and all that. You know, and he was a very learned man. And he also became known as apostle to the Gentiles, because he had a real revelation of grace, and the Gentiles were non-Jews. And he had a revelation that when they got saved, they didn't have to follow the law, they didn't have to be circumcised, they didn't have to do all these different ritual things. And he spent a lot of his time persuading both Jews and Gentiles that was the case, that there was this freedom with grace. Many accomplishments. He went on 3 missionary journeys. He took the gospel throughout the Roman Empire. 14 of the 27 New Testament books are attributed to him. He wrote it to encourage and challenge people, the readers that he wrote to. He wasn't scared of meeting challenges head on, of telling people that things need to change, of challenging people's behaviours. He wasn't feared of all that. With this zeal that he's got and this passion, which is and his knowledge and revelation and wisdom. And the good thing about all that is it enabled him to face all these things that he said, which were, he says about himself this, by the way, he worked hard, was in prison, flogged, exposed to death again and again, pelted with stones, shipwrecked 3 times, constantly on the move, laboured and toiled, known hunger, thirst, gone without food, been cold and naked. And I've got to say, to be fair, when I first became a Christian, it irritated the life out of me reading that. I just thought, who do you think you are? You know, really like, dead proud, you know, whatever, fella. And then as you kind of grow, hopefully your pride goes down less. I realised what a guy he is, what a guy that in my Christian walk, I haven't faced half the stuff that he's faced. Yeah, I've struggled. And to read that, you just think, this guy didn't grow weary, and he continued. So what he's got to say, and when he speaks, we need to listen, because the guy's got some good wisdom that can really help us in our life, because it sure did wonders for him. Yeah. So, next slide, sorry. So the letter that I'm going to read from today was to the Corinthian church. Now, Corinth, the Romans rebuilt Corinth as a major city. And it had 2 nearby ports, so it was very affluent, there was a lot of money, there was a trading centre, so, you know, along with money comes all the usual things in cities. So it was a real mixed bag of people, lots of social mobility, lots of stuff going on. It was made of a population of Romans, Greeks, Jews, and all the different things that comes along with that when you've got multi-kind of cultural societies. It was known for its sexual exploits, for prostitutes, cults, all things like that. And to be honest with you, when you start reading about it, it's just like thinking about any city, any major city in a Western society. It is what it is, isn't it? There's no real difference as it was then as it is today. So he was writing to that church. Paul was there in about AD 51, 52, and he stayed there for 2 years. And he really imparted 2 years of his life through his wisdom, his teachings, his understanding of the scriptures, the way our Christian life should look, discipleship, all these things. He really spent 2 years just feeding into their lives. So this letter is off the back of that, really. He started to hear that kind of practices from culture, that things are sneaking into the church, behaviours are sneaking into the church that really aren't godly or aren't really wise to be there. So he's addressing those kind of issues. And it's things like unity, morality, freedom, personal responsibility, this kind of, almost lackadaisical attitude coming to the church, to try and move people away from a self-centred lifestyle to purposeful discipleship. So, and Paul was just challenging that. So, where's my Bible? Where's my Bible? It will come on here, I think. Yeah, demonstration. So basically, the passage I'm looking at is 1 Corinthians 9, 24 to 25. And it says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Yeah. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get the crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever." So he's talking about, straight away, Paul puts it into a context of a race to highlight a point of self-discipline, of that kind of self-disciplined lifestyle. And the great thing about Paul is he uses stories all the time that people understand. He meets them where they're at. So he did that in Acts when he was talking about the unknown God, in this kind of place where they're all at, and he said, you've got this God, you've got that God, you've got that God, but there's an unknown God. But I've come to make known to you that unknown God. I'm going to tell you who he is. So he was almost really quite stealth in the way that he did it, because he used principles they understood to make it become alive in their head. I get it, and in their heart, I know what you're talking about. And he was a scholar, he was very educated, and he used people's own beliefs, like I said, and he would use the law to reveal Jesus to the Jews, and he would use culture and conscience to reveal Jesus to the Gentiles and non-Jews who didn't have that kind of history. So here he's using a race to display that attitude, to illustrate this point to the Corinthians, because in the Greek culture, there was a 4-year cycle called the Olympiad, and that was the 4-year cycle of the games. It started with the Olympics in the first year, and then you had the 2-year cycle of the Isthmian Games, and they were held every 2 years, and they were held in Corinth. So people would automatically, every 2 years, they would understand what it entailed. They would see the runners, they knew what races were ran there, they knew what training would go into those races, they knew the dedication, and all these things. So the games to the Greeks were fundamental religious, and because they were steeped in Greek mythology, they would sacrifice oxen while they were doing it. And originally the races that were involved in these games were short sprint races, and it was only over 1 day. There would be short sprint races, and the increase as the years went on, they started adding in, boxing and wrestling and chariots and all that kind of thing. But the point is, people instantly understood what Paul was talking about as soon as he started using this picture of a race. They were onto it. Okay, I get it. I can see this in my head playing out with people, how they're training. The interesting thing was I actually started looking at it, because I've always seen this verse as almost like the race of your life, seeing it out to the end, racing it out to the end. The interesting thing when you look at the word race that he uses is the word stadium. Now, when he said that to the Corinthian community, they would understand that means a short distance race. It's the length of a stadium, so it would either be the 100 metres, a 50-metre race, a 200-metre race. It was a short distance race. This was something that you go flat out at, you keep going, and you just blinkers on, like Usain Bolt, run it, and then that's it. It wasn't a marathon race. It was a race that would cause a lot of pain. He uses the word as well, where he talks about distance, a contest or games, which actually means the agony of the fight. So what Paul is instantly talking about, that we miss all this. It's such a shame we miss all this when we read it. But when he was talking to them, they understood straight away. He was talking about anaerobic exercise or lactic acid, that pain of the short distance race, that spurt of going, not kind of like the aerobic plodding of a marathon, that's not any painful, but plodding of a marathon where you haven't got that same build of pain. It's real kind of like pushing through. So they understood the focus and determination of that, and that was just a real revelation to me. It made me see this differently in a sense of, actually, is this more of your daily sprint race? Is this more of a daily sprint that we need to do, where we're so focused each day about, right, I'm going to make good choices today, and not just being a bit like, oh, it's a marathon, we're in it for the long haul, you know, where we can be a bit more relaxed, a little bit more maybe lacking in purpose and focus, and this is what he's trying to address, this idea of focus and self-discipline. So I thought that was very, very interesting to me already. I was kind of getting excited about that. Now, there's also the victor's crown versus the crown that lasts forever. So, and again, the Corinthians automatically understood about this prize. It's only the first person across the line, you get a wreath of pine leaves. Wonderful. But, you know, you've got all the kudos that came with that. There would have been this wreath of pine leaves, and there was poems written about them, and they were like immortalised as heroes, and you know, all that kudos and all that kind of business. But nobody else got a prize. Everybody else was a loser. What Paul talks about here is the assurance that we're getting an eternal crown, which is wonderful. So, if you're a Christian today and you know Jesus, you've got your crown. Yeah. We're not running with any doubt that we're going to lose. We're not running thinking, competing against each other that you're going to lose. You've got your crown. So, even more so, Paul is saying, you know, we're seeing people giving it absolutely all, giving it everything for a crown of leaves, you know, and maybe a bit of a poem or something. And we've got this crown that is eternal, that is secure. And we maybe just being a little bit like, oh yeah, I'm just going to carry on running a little bit, you know. And so we should be challenged even more by this, that we've got this, the guarantee that come on, let's use that as our energy to do it. We should be focused and motivated to hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant, you know, because they're going to be mad. It's magical. It gives me goosebumps thinking of that. And I think the other thing to remember as well is because we're not competing for a crown. It's not a competition. We're not like eyeing each other up. I'm not eyeing a net up with the Golden Girls thinking I'm going to get a better life millionaire. It's going to be more successful. It's going to be more people. You know, we're not competing today, are we? We're team church. Yeah. So we're out for personal bests because God has a plan for your life, and he has a plan for my life, and a plan for Lucas's life. He has a plan for all of our lives which will look differently. You know, and as soon as we start to live out somebody else's life or somebody else's calling, it all goes wrong. Now, I hate competition unless I can win. So I really, it drives me mad. So if I know that somebody's better than me, I just won't even try. So I just think, because you hate to feel inadequate, don't you? No one wants to feel inadequate. You feel a lesser of a person. And that's the wonderful thing. We're free from that. It's not about, it's recognising the different giftings and abilities that we have in this place and celebrating it. And we run together as a team so that each of us can achieve our PB. So I'd be encouraged by that because I found that really, really wonderful. And so whoever said that it's all about taking part, they must have been a winner, is all I can say. Because it's not. It's awful. Because God says that he has plans for us. So in Psalm 139, it says, "For you created my innermost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." And then again in Jeremiah, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And then in 1 Corinthians it talks again about, which is interesting, that we talked about the body and everything before, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone it is the same God at work. And then it lists all the gifts. And it says, just as one body, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit, so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so the body is not made up of one part, but many. So Paul talks about the body and how we're all different, but we're like one team. So in this race we are team church, and we're aiming that we're all going to get our PB. So I found that really encouraging today, that we're all there to support each other. The other thing that I got out of this as well is that there is a bonus prize. We talk about this crown, we've got our salvation, which is wonderful, we're going to heaven, which is great, we can all really rejoice in that, and we can all run with that in mind with real vigour. But I just think the bonus prize in Thessalonians, it says, "For what is our hope, our joy, or our crown, which will glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when he comes? Is it not you? You are our glory and our joy." So Paul recognised the importance of people. That it's not just about us running so that we get in. I'm all right, Jack, I'm in. You know, we're running in mind as well that we take this bonus prize, which is people. We can take people with us, knowing, you know, he sees and celebrates the importance of seeing lives set free, people coming to know Jesus. you know, people getting free from addiction, people, you know, being healed, all these wonderful, wonderful things. And that, he says, he recognised then, he says, you are our glory and our joy, you know, and that is the bonus prize. So don't just run in mind today that, yes, I'm so thankful for what God has done for me and my crown is secure, but also the influence that you can have in people's lives around you. As we share Jesus, as we seek to do our PB and we share who Jesus is, what he's done in our lives, and we just support people, they're also going to be our bonus prize when we get to heaven. So I would say let that motivate us to run hard today as well. So, we know it's hard. We know that it's a sprint race that we're doing, so we need a lot of energy and it can be painful. So I've kind of got two things about what can help us to run this race well, this sprint, doing it really well. And the first one is the truth about nutrition. So, this last, you all know because I have it all over Facebook, but I've lost just over 3.5 stone in the last year. So I've been all about nutrition lately, and I've been made up. But you always try and cheat. Whenever you're dieting and you're trying to lose weight, you're always trying to cheat your body into not recognising what you're putting in it, you know. So every Thursday I get weighed, and after weighing, seriously, I would go to McDonald's and I would have a large Big Mac meal with a cheeseburger in the car on the way home. So Steve never knew about the cheeseburger. He just thought I had the large Big Mac meal. So I loved it, and maybe I had a glass of wine with it when I got in. So terrible for calories, dreadful. So and the guy at boot, because I go to boot camp as well, the guy at boot camp was saying, why are you putting these toxins in your body? Formula One would not be using vegetable oil in their cars. You know, and I was going, but I'm losing weight, am I right? And he said, it's not about that. You're putting rubbish in your body. Why would you do that? So as a challenge, he was like, stop the Big Macs. And I did. He shamed me in front of everybody. So stop the Big Macs. And I didn't have any for about, oh God, it must have been about 4 or 5 weeks, like a whole 4 or 5 weeks. And then our dorm was here. That was our dorm was here. So I went and had a Big Mac. It was a necessity. There was nothing else. And I felt awful, you know. I felt really sluggish, really bloated. It made me really tired. I felt like I wanted to be sick. And it was only after I'd kind of gotten rid of that toxins, as Scott would say, from my diet that I realised how it did affect my body in such a negative way. So that what we put in our bodies affects our performance. So it's all about getting the right fuel. Now athletes, they've got all these really wonderful diets, haven't they? They always want a different fuel for a different task they're trying to do. So you'll get bodybuilders who love their protein for muscle repair and growth. You'll get long distance running who use carb loading so they can increase their glucose stores, calorie counting, crossfitters at the moment, this is a new one, the paleo diet, where they're all eating like cavemen, because that's probably the most natural thing that we're meant to be eating, so it's like loads of raw stuff and all that kind of business. Macro diet, some people say as long as you get your right balance of carbs, it doesn't matter what they are, whether it's a Big Mac or pasta, so there's all that kind of stuff. And I had a guy came in the other day, he was a bodybuilder, a patient, I work as a nurse, and came in for a health check. And he was in his cutting process because he was just waiting to go and compete. So he looked buff, and to be fair, I knew to take his blood pressure. And I turned around to get my stethoscope, and he'd whipped his top off. And I thought, whatever, fella. So I did his blood pressure. And so he was talking about his diet. And it was crazy because he was desperate to get the appearance of being ripped because he was competing. So he was having like minimal carbs, no fat, no dairy, treated himself to almond milk. Once a week, it was like peanut butter, it was ridiculous stuff. And then but he looked fabulous, looked great, you know. But when his bloods came back, his kidney function was really reduced, they weren't filtering properly, his salts were all over the place, his cholesterol function was everywhere. It wasn't good for his body. What he was putting in, although he looked all right, it was not good for his body and it wasn't serving him well, he wasn't functioning well. So it's all about, I think, the new things about eating clean. So we need to eat a clean diet, which is, you know, we talk about low fat and avoid processed foods, fruit and vegetables, just the basic stuff that we all understand. And there's this 80-20 principle. Have 80% clean food, Bear Grylls loves this. 80% clean food, so you're getting all good stuff to nourish your cells, keep you hydrated, your body will perform as an athlete. And then 20% of the time, you could maybe have a little bit of a treat that isn't necessarily a great nutrient. And I thought this was a really good principle to look at about what's my spiritual food life like? Have I got this 80-20 split? Or which way is the 80-20 split? You know. So, and I just thought, and I know that's not very biblical, there's not an 80-20 split in the Bible, but I just thought it was a good kind of line to draw and say, what is my nutrition like in my spiritual life? So I've been genuinely really challenged about this. I'm not talking about someone who's arrived by any means. Because Because the Bible does talk about how it is food for the spirit. You know, in Luke 4, Jesus says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Hebrews 5 talks about you need milk, not solid food. Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness, but solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good and evil. And 1 Peter says, like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. So we're to crave the words of God. We're to crave all this truth. It's the truth that sets us free. It's the truth that will change our lives. And we're to crave it. And we're to there's a progression there as well. We start off with milk, with simple truths, and then we're to delve into it to understand it more, rightly divide the word of truth, you know, where we get onto meat, where it sets our lives free. It really changes us. We become sanctified. All the behaviours, our attitudes change, our lives, our hearts change. You know, the truth of the Bible, Jesus referred to it, the Bible refers to it, that the truth enables us to be transformed. The truth gives us strength for life. The truth enables us, with the Holy Spirit itself, to become more like Christ. And the truth renews our mind. You know, Romans says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing and perfect will. And this is how we find out what our PB is. This is how we find out what God's plans are for our life, is we spend time with him, we spend time praying with the Holy Spirit, reading the word, and God speaks to us. There's generic truths that as Christians that we should follow, you know, being discipled and all that, but then there's things that God asks for us individually to do, and we find that out by spending time in the truth. And I also find it challenging because I think about how much time, what do I do with my kids? How much time with my kids am I filling them with, like, I mean, they say don't there's science behind the flickering of the TV, that it somehow hypnotises at the right speed of the eye. And that's great, isn't it? At bedtime or at 6 o'clock when I'm out of bed, I want them hypnotised at that TV. But you do start to challenge, what am I actually letting my kids watch? What am I watching? How much am I spending time listening to Radio 1, maybe in the background, or watching crime dramas, which I love? You know, compared to how much I'm spending in the truth, spending time pursuing Jesus and being more like him, you know. So it's more of a reflection and a challenge about, you know, look at the percentage maybe of what we're doing with our lives, and because it will affect, you know, how we think. It will affect, because if we've got no fuel, when we face life situations, the stadium of life, when we're in our daily race, if we haven't got this truth, then what are we running on? What are we using as fuel to get us to the end? You know, we're just going to be kind of walking it, you know, instead of running it with vigour. Because the promises in the Bible, there's just so many, isn't there? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledging him, and he will make your path straight. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love and self-discipline. I have set the Lord always before me, because he's my right hand and I will not be shaken. These are all the things that when each day is hard, it might be a good day, I'm not being, you know, but on a day where it's hard and you're struggling to kind of keep going and keep focused, these are the things that even say out loud when we're worshipping. You know, I was sat at the back and you're worshipping, you're singing these truths out about who God is, and you can feel your faith rising. You can feel like, yeah, come on, we can do it. Have it. You know, it's just wonderful stuff, but you need to know it for it to come to mind. If you don't know it and you're thinking about Dawson's Creek or Coronation Street or what would, you know, such a character do, it's not going to do you well, to be fair. You know, these are the truths that we need in our lives, because these are what are going to really make the difference. Now, the next thing is being positioned for success. That was the next thing I kind of took out of this. Because competitive athletes, it's all about, especially runners, long distance, it's all about the position, isn't it? Like they're coming to, you see them all set off, and they don't want to get too far in the front because they'll get burned out. They don't want to get too far behind because then you end up with a tussle of how do I get to the front to break away. So it's all about positioning. Again, the nice thing is, remember, we're not competing each other, so we're not like eyeballing each other competing. We're team PB, we're team at church running together today, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, positioning. So on that note, we'll just watch this little video. Step out of the way. movie for everybody. I love that video when I was watching it. The woman who owns that gym, she's called Andrea Agar, and she's a Christian. And this is the new whole CrossFit thing. And the whole CrossFit thing, especially for the women at the moment, is about strength is beauty. So instead of kind of going for the whole skinny thing, strength is beautiful. And I'm watching that video because I'm not into CrossFit, I'm more into a little bit of powerlifting and all that. Watching that, it was more or less about the exercising, because if we're talking about sprint racing, it's all about the kind of lactic acid power exercise, which is the same as that. You've got the muscle burn, it's really hurting. The interesting thing that I really like about that community is that each person has got somebody eyeballing them. Each person's got someone in front of them saying, come on, you can do it. Because the last rep is the hardest rep. You're not going to get that out because it's too easy to give up. It's too easy, it's too painful, ouch. You know, but they've got somebody in front of them, if not more than one person that's cheering them on, that's saying, you can do it, come on. Even doing like, come on, push, with them doing it, you know, walking alongside them and empathising. Now, it's a vulnerable place to be, because if you lift weights, you know what it's like. If I ever do a bench press and you've got someone spotting you, once you get to the heaviest weight or the last rep, it's really hard, and your lip starts going like that. You kind of get this bit of an Elvis quiver, you know, and you're really like, trying to push the weight up, and there's just no dignity in that, really, is there? You know, and for them, what, they could drop the weight, they might, you know, pass wind, it's all tension, it's all terrible stuff, and it's vulnerability, and that's the key. Unless we are vulnerable with people, unless we are genuinely honest with the people around us about what we are struggling with in life, how can they effectively cheer us on? How can we cheer each other on if we don't know what your problems are, or where you're struggling, or where you're finding you're weak? You know, because I can tell you now, I want to encourage anybody here today, but I need to know what I need to encourage you in. And the thing is, having people around you who are also full of good nutrition. And I appreciate it's all a bit kind of grunting and that, like you don't have to be grunted or eyeballed at, you can gently encourage people. But you just need people around you who are full of truth, who have got good nutrition, who are further on, who are eating meat, further on in their walk maybe, and they can just encourage you with truth, and they can say you can do it, you haven't got a spirit of timidity, you are strong, you know, God will not leave you or forsake you, you're not going to fail in this journey, continue on, you know, and that's wonderful. And I'd also ask today, who are you actively? Is there somebody that you know that you're cheering on today, right now? You know, because we need to place it. It's great that you were talking about life groups today and life pods, because they're a great place that we can do that. They're a great place where, because I appreciate there has to be trust. You have to trust people to open up and be vulnerable and tell them your weak spots, you know. But they're the places to do it, in them small group settings where you can build trust and you can start to be honest, and we can genuinely pray for each other, and we can genuinely minister to each other and encourage each other. Not just kind of generic blessings, if you know what I mean, but really actively support each other, which I think is just wonderful. Because it was like you said last week, I am my own biggest critic, you know, and there's going to be everybody else out there that can tell you you're crazy, you can't do that. Even yourself say I'm crazy, I'm not worthy, I'm rubbish. So we need to kind of make sure that we're doing the opposite to each other, to encourage each other to win. The other thing I would say today as well is, I don't know if anyone remembers the Olympics with the Brownlee brothers. It brought me to tears, that story, watching that race play out. The triathletes, and they both wanted a medal position. Brothers, both wanted a medal position. And the younger brother, when they were transitioning from the water to the bike, apparently got on his bike too early, so he incurred a 15-second penalty to take, which whenever he wanted, but 15-second penalty. And normally when you run in a race, you know, a normal race, you're competing against each other, aren't you? But because it was his brother, the older brother, Alistair, he still had his brother in mind, because they wanted to be on the podium together, they wanted a medal together. So when they were on the bike, he changed his strategy, and what he did was he pedalled harder to tire out the opponents, because he knew that his brother's ability on the run, the opponent's legs would be tired from pedalling harder, keeping up with him, so that when his brother rejoined the race, he'd be able to make up, because his legs would be slightly rested, and he could make it up. Now, I know we're obviously, again, we're not competing against each other today, we're definitely not. But what I would say is, if you're in a position where you feel like, for whatever reason, you're having a little bit of time out, like the younger brother, or you don't feel strong, or maybe your nutrition's not been great, or just for whatever reason you don't feel like you're racing, well, this stadia race each day, I would encourage you to don't avoid the church. Don't think, oh, I can't go there, or I can't face it. Don't avoid it. It's where you need to be. Because as a team church, we are running with you in mind. We are running with you in mind that you will be stronger, that as you sit with us, you will hear what's going on, that God will minister to you, that we can help you with your nutrition, all these things, so that you get to the point where you are running a strong stadia race yourself, that you are doing it, and then that you are cheering other people on. So if you are in that place where you're feeling a little bit weak, we're running with you in mind. You need to stay where you are. So just, and the crowd, that was it, the crowd. Don't forget the crowd. It talks in the Bible about a crowd of witnesses. Now, it doesn't literally mean they're up there watching as a crowd cheering us on, but, when you're feeling discouraged, just remember all the people that have gone before us and that have run a great race. They weren't perfect people by any means, but they were noted in the Bible to have lived a life of faith, worshipping Jesus, and they left a legacy. So the Bible tells us there, when you're feeling weary or unworthy, remember these people who weren't perfect, but they were noted as leaving us a legacy, and that they were normal people. So I'd just be encouraged by that, and that, Abraham obeyed God, and he ended up with descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Rahab, who by faith welcomed God's spies and saved her family from the fall of Jericho. And then there's Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith had conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword. So that's quite a legacy to leave, to be honest. But be encouraged by it, that's a wonderful thing. So, so just in closing, I'd encourage you to run the race today. It's a sprint race each day, choosing what nutrition you put in your body, choosing what we feed on to give us the strength to run this race well. Be reassured that our crown of salvation is there. If you know Jesus today, we have got that crown, we've got the prize. We're not competing against each other. That is done. And then we also have this bonus prize that we get to see people that we've interacted with there. So I challenge you now as we sing and just reflect on that. Just, what nutrition are you putting in your life, and who are you cheering on, and where are you at, and can you be vulnerable with people that we can support you, or is there people you can support? But just pray as you sing that God will just speak to you, and just be encouraged this morning.